This video is going to show you Solo Grandmaster Nightfall getting Platinum rank on the Glassway this week on a Warlock. We've already covered Titan and Hunter, so if you want to see those runs, they're up. But this is obviously focusing on the Warlock because we haven't done that this week. So I'm playing a bit more aggressive than what you need to here, but I'm just showing off the utility of the setup. So we get a stun there with the grenade. You need to sparrow up to this location to sort of get to pull that off to that degree. If you don't want to do that, then just take them at your leisure with the Monarque, right, from a range. So the loadout is a anti-barrier pulse rifle with adaptive munitions from Duality. We've got the Exotic Bow on La Monarque, like we have for the other previous runs. Because La Monarque's best in slot for Glassway, honestly, it really is. It's too good to pass up. And then we're using Fallen Guillotine, a Void Sword, which I've also ran swords on other classes. With the Warlock though, there's no class specific sword. Well, there is, but it doesn't count. It's just an adaptive frame sword. And I believe it's solar. I'm right to say it's solar, so it wouldn't even benefit you here anyways. So you probably just want to go back to Fallen Guillotine. If you're going to use a sword, you can use Taipan. It's there to use. Very good at this minute. If you want to have fun with linear fusion rifles before they get nerfed, this is the time to do it. But other than that, I wouldn't recommend it over what I'm using right here. Guillotine, I'm not messing around. It's fantastic in this. Void swords are. Providing that you've got the playstyle down and you understand what you need to do when you're at the boss, then yeah, they're best in slot. For somebody who doesn't know what they're doing with the sword, no, they're terrible. You're going to die. But this is what you'll be watching this video for, to learn how to use the sword and how to play for the boss fight for safety. So we cleared out those two champs, no problem at all. Mainly with the build, volatile rounds. So everything else that we're using, aspects are feed the Void Chaos Accelerant, so we get Devour plus the Chaos Accelerant. And Fragments are very important, make sure you spec them accordingly. So I do recommend Echo of Instability on, because you're going to get volatile rounds, which is going to be frequent, let's be honest, with the Voidwalker, because you're using Contraverse hold, the exotic gauntlets, it gives you tons of Vortex Grenades. So it just makes sense to put Echo of Instability on. Echo of Undermining is a big one. Make sure you put that one on because it's going to add a debuff to your loadout. Right, your loadout's full of buffs, solo operative, high energy fire, which they stack together. You can use Lucent Blade if you want, but it's not required. It is going to give you a little bit more damage though than what high energy fire would. But if you want to fit that in on your setup, you can. The other thing about that is you won't get you won't get a bonus for your bow. You'll only get a bonus for your sword. So barriers will be a bit more of a nuisance for you, but the overloads will be a bit easier. So you've got to sort of calculate. What do you think? I just think High Energy Fire is going to be a little bit better for you because you're getting a damage bonus on barriers and overloads, as opposed to Lucent Blade only giving you the benefit for overloads. This little section here, you want to take out the VIP target first, of course, right, before you push up, because the barrier is going to push up when you're here, and that barrier would then tether the VIP target, making it annoying. So we're using Nova Warp, right? Now again, I'm not using it to joke about. It really is good in this because of the comments I made on the previous videos on Glassway on the usefulness of Roman supers. Now Roman supers are going to be a little bit different in Nightfall, so it's time to learn them, because I know there's a lot of you just stick to one super. I know what you do. Nova Bomb, we know what you're doing. You're just Nova Bombing all day. Arc Titans, what are you doing? You're using Thunder Crash. You refuse to use anything else. Sentinels, you're using Bubble. Why? Start using Sentinel Shield a bit. Bubble's not what it used to be anyways. Like, start using Roman supers. There's huge benefits to doing it. I'll discuss more about it, I guess, when we get to the boss fight. This little section we're going to get Devour to proc, because we've got the Devour aspect on, of course, so we get Devour to proc on ability kill. So you can play a little bit more aggressive, alright, on the Warlock as opposed to Hunter, let's say. Hunter promotes passive play. Even when you're playing an aggressive play style with volatile rounds, you still not going to be as aggressive as a Warlock with the Devour, unless you run a Devour build on Hunters, which you can obviously with the picking up of the orbs and all that jazz. But for the most part, the king of Devour builds is Warlock, because you don't need orbs to make it work. It just works, right, with the stuff on. So you can play a little bit more aggressive here, but again, if you don't want to play stuff a bit more passive, I've shown that on the other videos on how you do that. You just sit back with the bow. Pretty straightforward. Clear out all the targets. Isolate the champ away from the enemies. Always try and take out all the snipers. Don't have line of sight of 4 snipers at once, because that will kill you. I mean, 2 or 3 snipers and shots to you, you're dead. So be careful of that. Once the boss... now there's two factors here. If the boss is less than half HP and there's ads still alive, the boss will back up. But if there's no ads up at all, including no champ, the boss will back up regardless of HP value. So there's that threat level that we talk about. This enemy gets a little bit scared when there's less enemies around, so it backs up to the back of the map. What does that mean? It means you can just spam your Vortex Grenades, spam your Monarque to take down the VIP targets fast. Which, like I say, if you maybe run a different type of heavy, it'll benefit you a bit more. Type you can use it. With the sword, you're not using the sword on the VIP target. There would be no point of doing that. Because once you push up, the barrier spawns. Like the previous rooms, it's the same rule for every time. This means you isolate the barrier away from all other targets. The Roman Supernova Warp will penetrate the barriers. When the barrier puts up a tether, it makes ads immune. We know this, but that can be penetrated by a couple of different things. And one good thing is supers. Now, Well of Radiance will do this as well. Obviously, we know this. Not much point in going Well of Radiance, if I'm being honest. Take advantage of your Void Cube burn. You know, you could go well. It would sort of kind of work at the boss, but kind of not as good as Voidwalker, if I'm being honest. I think your 2 picks are Stasis Warlock, which would notably be good, and Voidwalker, obviously. For me, Stasis Warlock would be a safe run, but it would be a little bit annoying on overloads. Fantastic on barriers, annoyance on overloads. It would freeze them in place, and providing that you get the build on with the gloves and all that stuff, it would be really good, and there'll be some stasis runs done. It's not impossible. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, there's a reason why I only got 2% stasis kills on my email that we all got. It's because we don't need stasis now. The game is too easy for stasis. Don't get me wrong, the harder the game is, the more of a need is for stasis. So on the old Grandmaster Nightfall, stasis was needed far more. Now you don't need it. Why? Because all the 3.0 Solar and Void and Arc melt in GMs. There's no requirement really for stasis, and I know a lot of stasis users are going to be disappointed with that, but there isn't. Honestly, you can melt far more efficiently with all of the light subclasses. There's no requirement for it. If the game was a bit more difficult than now, then there's more of a reason to use stasis, because stasis is about not speed, it's about control. It's about controlling everything. Right now I'm messing up. I've pressed my grenade button by accident. If you're unsure on what I've actually done there. So I've actually messed up a little bit. That's fine. So yeah, there's no requirement for stasis, but if you want to add that to a team loadout, do it. Is there a need to do a solo with Stasis Warlock? You could still do it, because we've got Stasis Overload up. The nade. The nade isn't just Void, it's Stasis. So Stasis lovers can do it and be good with it. But as I said, it's always going to be slower. It will. If you put 2 runs side by side of the same player, it doesn't matter their skill, right? Explain to them how the Void works, explain to them how the Stasis works. They will always be more efficient with the Void than the Stasis, because the Stasis will not stun Overload champs correctly. Right? It won't stun them correctly. Voidwalker, Void Grenades, it's always been good at stunning Overloads. So it's too good to pass up. Yeah, so that's why there's a lack of stasis runs on the channel, is because the game's too easy for it to be required anymore, essentially. Not that it's too easy. Obviously it has got easier, but that's going to be different in Nightfall, isn't it? So things will change. Stasis will be a bit more useful then, because of how abilities are going to work with stunning champions and whatnot. Right now in the game, it's like, yeah, why go Behemoth when I can go Sentinel? You know, why go that? Why not just use Sunbreaker? Yeah, far more effective, far more efficient. I'll be honest, the only time I ever do a stasis run is for the purpose of the video, to kind of show off with it. That is it. It's not to be more effective with it, because there isn't. It just isn't as effective. It isn't. So what I'm doing there is I needed a way to get Devour. Now it's difficult to get Devour off these shanks when they're in there with a grenade. So what I've done there smartly is let the shanks try to capture the plate, get a nade on the plate to proc Devour. Now I can cap the plate without having to retreat even once. Yeah, because obviously I've got Devour going. So it's just a little easy strat. You could pull out your pulse, get the shank weak, then use your melee. But while that's happening, shanks might hit you in the side or up front. So it's just if you want to get Devour proc on this little plate thing, then just use your nade. Now a couple of people have mentioned that the spawns are different between solo and team. So when you're on your team runs, you notice that there's sniper shanks, and there's big shanks. Why isn't that on solo? Well, I know this. I tested this when GLASSWAY first came out, day 1, week 1. And I figured that out pretty quick. I've known this for a long time, since Beyond Light. My conclusion is that they've specifically done that on purpose to allow people to capture the plate solo, to give a solo player a chance. Because you need to understand that they're not making the game for the highest skill. They're making for... They've got to allow for players with a lower skill level. And sometimes they'll make a different spawn. It's very rare that they do it. They used to do it for it. It has happened in the past, right? We inverted Spire when it was on a different rotation for enemies, because it went through a lot of different history of different enemy rotations in that Nightfall. So it has happened. It's very rare that they do it. It's strange that it is, but just take it. So what? It is what it is. It's not a bug. It's nothing. It's just different enemy spawns for solo as opposed to team. So I come to this little wall to start the next enemy wave. There'll be snipers spawning in now as we speak. There'll be a heavy solar shank which you're going to use your super for. We don't have solar in our loadout. The heavy shank can melt you. So I recommend this is the time to use a super. Now if you're using regular Nova Bomb, either be the Cataclysmic one or the other one, the Pocket Singularity or whatever it's called. No, that's the melee. I don't know what the other melee is called. Whatever, what the other Nova is called, whatever that's called. Use it. But obviously, as I say, I'm recommending that you use Nova Warp because it's got huge benefits of survivability. If you whiff a Nova Bomb, your Nova Bomb's gone. And the big Nova, the Tracker Nova, has a bad reputation of getting shot down by enemies. This is because of enemy AI. Enemy AI is put to 11 when you get to Grandmaster content. And they have a tendency of shooting your grenade out of your hand. As you throw it, they shoot it, right? And then the Nova, the big Nova. So probably if you're going to use Nova, use the smaller Nova. Whatever the name of it is escaping me right now. Whatever the name of that Nova is, use that one instead. But I don't think that is even as good as Nova Warp. I think for this specifically, Nova Warp's far better because it's going to do all the things that you want it to do for solo. Now, bear in mind in team, you might not want to run Nova Warp. You might get in people's way with it. That's different. Maybe Nova is better for that. But for this, when you need to stay alive and if you die, it's over type thing, the Nova Warp's a panic button for you. It will kill Rivens. You get super armor because you are in a Roman super, which does stack with tier 10 resilience, which makes you very tanky in the game. Super tanky. And only Roman supers have this. T-Crash doesn't. It will have it in its animation, but once you hit your T-Crash, you lose it. If you're using Curious of Fallen Star, obviously you have an overshield, but chances are you won't be using that because you're using Heart of Inmost Light. So I'm just saying there's a big benefit to using Roman servers, and you'll see it anyways in the run. So right now I'm farming up some super energy. I'm not going to use abilities too much here on this champ. There's no need to do that, because you really want all abilities available to you on this first phase, because this is where things get a bit more difficult. Getting to the boss is fine. You can get to the boss in 10 to 15 minutes, anyone, no problem. It's when we get to the bosses where people die and they don't understand what to do. So you've got to look exactly at my position and exactly what I'm doing. So right now we're trying to aggravate the Minotaur by showing ourselves. If you see there, the Minotaur's rushing us. Perfect. I showed myself just enough for that to happen. I wasn't just standing there aimlessly like, oh look, there's loads of enemies coming. No, I was actually looking to see if I could get line of sight with that Minotaur. Yeah, to get one of the Minotaurs to push. If two of them do, that might happen. But if that happens, kill one and then get out of there. And then rotate around this room. Obviously, you're going to play in this room exclusively. You will never go to the right-hand side. Apart from one example where you will. You'll always play on this left-hand side because you've got lots of cover. So I didn't quite have nade ready. Because obviously I've got Voidwalker grenade. You want to stun with your grenade, not Monarque, for bigger success, because there's a couple of things that happens there. You debuff plus with your buffs, because you get counter charge, energy, fire, solo operative, so all those things will stack together, which means you'll do massive damage with your sword, and you'll do quicker damage with your sword, because think, when you stun with Le Monarque, there's a half a second time for you to then swap to the sword to get ready with the sword to start swinging. That's time lost. Whereas if you get an instant stun with the nade, sword is already out. So you're getting in more damage. You're more likely to one cycle the overload. You must be able to one cycle these overloads. If you don't, they will wipe you. Their melee almost kills you. One melee off them will kill you. Their void blasts are very dangerous still. Even with the resistance that we have now, they're still threatening. Super threatening. Get rid of this Hydra though on phase 2 of 1. Sorry, on the phase 1, get rid of that Hydra. Obviously the ads are dictated by the Hydra, the mini Hydra, if you didn't know that by now. So you get an extra, you're duplicating the wave you've just done. So same thing, we're stunning around corners, we're getting that nade charged, ready, with sword equipped, to get a stun around the corner. This is the most consistent way to stun overloads. Because obviously we know that when they have line of sight, they'll keep teleporting and they'll try to... The gimmick is that they want to teleport through your shots. But they hate teleporting through no nades, especially if it's around a corner like that. So it's manipulating these champs to make it easier for you. This is what I'm trying to show people to learn Glassway. We've still got an overload up. I'm free peeking corners with the sword. Yeah, so you can see how things come before you actually physically see them. Same thing, same deal. Get a stun with the nade, you're debuffing that champ. Now you can either use the light swings with Guillotine and get Relentless Strikes to keep proccing over so that you get the ammo. I hope that you have got the Relentless Strikes Whirlwind Blade sword. I think most people do have this sword who played Season of Arrivals. They farmed up that sword a long time ago. So obviously Relentless Strikes Whirlwind Blade Nova Sword roll, for the role I've mentioned on Guillotine specifically, will match that roll. No Vorpal Weapon, no Frenzies, none of that garbage. Whirlwind Strikes, Relentless Strikes, Whirlwind Blade. If you have a poorly rolled Guillotine, it'll be a little bit more sketchy for you, but if you provide that you run the buffs and the debuffs that I ran, you should be fine. You should at least get that champ finishable. Finish the champ. Yeah, so you don't have to physically kill the champ, you just need to get him down to 80%. With 20% HP left. This is where you do boss DPS all the time from left hand side. You can't get the crit, well sometimes you can, but you're just wanting to do poison damage with the Monarque. If you hit the shield, poison damage will penetrate the boss's shield and it'll do poison. It'll just be at a slower rate. So I just speed up the DPS phase because you'll learn nothing on Glassway when you're just watching DPS, because there's nothing to it. It's the easiest part of the run. So now we're on Riven phase 2 of the fight. Now I'm going to go left hand side. I'm going to change my strat up a little bit because this strat allows you to definitely clear one of the Rivens every time like that with the bow. Yeah. Then you want to look at where the second Riven has went, which this is where you need to be observant. The second Riven hasn't went through middle, it went left. Reason for that is because I was last on left. That isn't always the same. Sometimes the Riven will come through middle, so it's something that you need to be observant with. Have your sword equipped? Peek around corners. Now we've dealt with that, we use the Nova Warp to melt. This is really consistent because it means that the Riven has no chance of killing you. If you pop a super at full HP, that Riven has no chance. And it's totally worth doing it. It's not a waste because after we kill these two barrier champions, you're gonna get your super back anyways. Just watch my super bar as we fight these champs. Obviously we can't use heavy on them. Well, you can when... Well, no, I don't recommend it at all, really. Just come to this location on the right-hand side. This is the only time that you fight on right-hand side. The reason why we do it here is because the Hydra can never see us. The Hydra, though, needs to be left alive, of course, because if you clear Hydra, you then get another wave of champions and Rivens, and we're not ready for Riven phase just yet. So the answer is to clear these two barriers. Because if you don't clear them now, you're going to have 4 later. You'll have 4 in total, won't you? So you don't really want to do that. So instead, this is a much better way. Plus, as I say, you're getting plenty of super energy. And it mean that you'll have super energy for Riven, for the second wave of Rivens. You just need to learn to strafe these sniper shots. Like now, you will not be one-shot by them, providing that you tier 10 resilience minimum. But you could get 2-shot. So if you get hit even once, let the barrier regenerate if you want, and then start again. Unless you're really confident with the strafe, outstrafe from their shots. And using cover, that's why we're on right-hand side. You've got loads of cover with them. So now ammo is what I need to think about. Because I'm 27 sword ammo, there's still another 4 overloads to take. Which is really what I'm going to be using sword on. I've probably just got enough ammo, but there might be times when I want to use my heavy attacks, so I'm looking for heavy ammo right now. This is the time to do it, by the way, as well. But yep, there's ammo here, because if you remember, I cleared some of the ads. I just need to step my toes in that Vex Milk. Doesn't clear as like it used to. People don't remember when Inside Terminus first came out, and there was that little alcove section where you would... step your toes in the Vex Milk, it would kill you instantly. If you look at what just happened there, it barely broke my shields. That just shows you the difference between then, 2019, to now. Huge differences. So we've done the same strat. We tried to clear out one of the Rivens on left. I don't think we did clear him though. He was still finishable, I think. The difference here is you can't expose yourself too much. And you need to be careful of the Hydra behind. So we use a super here. We did clear the first Riven. I'm talking about. We did. So we use the Roman super again because it's totally not a waste. It's doing its job. Once you've got 20% super remaining though, make sure you get back in time. Don't just fully commit to super damage out there. Just have it do its job. What's its job? Well, Rivens. Nova Warp's job is Rivens. And a bit of ad clear here and there. Monarque's job is poison damage to the boss, Hydra, ad clear, and the sword is for burst damage and for clearing out the overloads. We need to get rid of the Hydra, send the Hydra away because should have sent the Hydra away earlier actually, but that didn't matter. That was fine. We'll take out the 2 remaining barriers because remember we took out the two initial ones on right hand side. We don't need to go right this time. We just play middle lane. This is where you'll easily take the barriers from. We've got pulse rifle holster on if you didn't notice, and this is actually decent because especially with adaptive munitions because I only need technically 6 to 9 bullets to break a shield. So it means I don't have to reload it constant. And it's not like it's the best well-ruled pulse that I've got. It's got adaptive, but that's really all it has got. But it's a tool, that's all it is for. It's not for ag clear. Le Monarque does that. So we're down to one barrier. All the harpies are fine with the match game shields because your Le Monarque will eat through their shield anyways. If not, then use adaptive munitions. But again, you don't really need to. We missed our nade there, so my nade flew over the champ. That's bad because I didn't get the great energy back of Contraverse Hold's perk. And we're going back to Overload phase. And if you haven't noticed already, Overload Grenade is very critical to the setup. I've got Bomber on, so when I do pop a healer mix, I'll get a bump to great energy. But what I'm doing here is I'm stalling a little bit. Stalling a bit with the champ. I'm 80% to a nade now, so that's fine. We're back on track with our abilities. It's just because I missed the nade. If that happens to you as well, same thing. Just wait, because it is critical. As you start this phase, you've got the abilities that you need. So look, we're doing good here. We'd aggro in the champ. I'm going to get a nade down here because I have a plan to stun Overload and then use Nova Warp. Why? Because I know I've already tested this. I'd already test what Nova Warp can do. Nova Warp can actually kill Overlords. So if you want to use Nova Warp in such a way, the only thing about it is you must stun, you must pop super first, then stun. Well, in that case, actually, I didn't do that, did I? But you should do that, really. If you say an Overlord's right on top of you, you pop your super, then throw a grenade while you're in your super, and that will actually definitely kill an Overlord. I know this because I tested it on Birthplace of the Wild, which is the same burn as this, isn't it? It's exactly the same. And they have the same health pills. Overlords have the same health pills right across the board on GM level. And it was a cute burn. So they do clear. They do clear the Overlords. So again, a top pick for Nova Warp. The thing with Nova Warp is it needs an exotic to boost it. I'm sure people would use it if there was just some exotic you slapped on and it boosts its damage and Raiden Flux, but for Nova Warp. Some sort of super. I mean, it doesn't have to last as long as Axe Rider with Raiden, but something. And I'm sure people would use it because there's still people not using it, but it is really good, honestly. Stun round corner. The champ didn't stun exactly where I wanted. Because if you stun the champ like that and he's in middle lane, you're going to get fired from middle lane, and it's not something I'm a fan on. So try and get that stun. Try and leave the stun until late-ish. I'm going to use my nade here because there's tons of fanatics on this phase, and they can get in the way of you while you're swording a champ. It's not something that you want to. So make sure you take those out. We're waiting on this second Overload. The second Overload will de-aggro a little bit, because you've cleared out most ads. So you need to re-aggro that champ, which we do that by showing our face. Don't stun with Le Monarque, stun with the nade. More consistent for when you're swording like this. Once you learn that, you'll know that this is easy then. Because sometimes we have that thing where Le Monarque, you see you didn't get your bow shot properly, fully drawn, then it won't overload champ. Champ will then melee you, almost kill you, and then it'll follow up with a Void Blast and then definitely kill you. So you've just got to learn the playstyle of getting a stun around a corner. And if you haven't got a nade, run around a bit until you do get your nade. But play the arena where I'm at. You're just kiting the Overload round corners. The Overload won't catch you if you keep doing that. Especially if it's just you and the Overload. You can play around with the Overload until you get things that you need, ability-wise. So we're on the final phase. Now we're back to Rivens. So I'll make the boss immune. Again, I'm going to play left lane this time because, as I said earlier, left lane helps you to kill a Riven for free. Charge a grenade to get some good damage as the Riven comes out, because you're on a timer here. You've only got so long to kill that Riven once. So amount of time has passed. The boss pushes. It's a little different to phase 2 because the boss is here. I'll use the Nova Warp here because Riven is round that corner. Let Nova Warp do its job. There's no point sitting on supers. It's the worst thing you can do. I hate it when people sit on supers. Never sit on a super. Let the super do its job. Let the super do its job. Still one Riven up. It was the one from earlier, but he should be really weak. I wasn't allowed to clear the Riven in time because the boss started to shield the Riven, but the Riven was finishable. I could have went over there and finished. The only one key thing about finishing targets, don't always trust it. There's a delay. Sometimes when you finish an enemy, they can still shoot you a frame before you finish you, and you can trade with a Riven trying to finish them. That has happened to me. It's also happened to me on Disgraced Barrier Champs when they melee you. So you finish them, but they still melee you at the same time. Sword Knights as well. Never do it, like, don't trust key targets that have one-shot potential on you to finish them. You're better off just clearing them with the nade. Yeah. Obviously with certain champs you want to finish them for the heavy if you're using loose and finisher and all this stuff. But Rivens, yes, they are finishable at a higher health pool at half HP. But it's not worth finishing them because sometimes there's that delay where they still do their attack whilst you're finishing them in the animation and you end up dying. It can happen. Don't trust it. It's void burn. So notice there I cleared out the two Rivens, no problem at all, because they sat in the nade. I done it from middle lane this time. The difference being here is that there's no Hydra to shoot me in the back. So I can play from middle lane like that and clear out both Rivens with a nade, essentially. So now we're on to barrier duty. Now there's 4 barriers because we cleared out the Hydra. The Hydra's a nuisance. The con to that is you've got 4 barriers to deal with. Which isn't too bad as long as you got the adaptive munitions pulse on, like I recommend. Make sure that you have. I believe most serious players will have adaptive munitions, like PvE. The fanatic on it. There's people fanatic on this perk, so I'm pretty sure that people do have it, PvE players. And if you don't, maybe you have a Vorpal pulse, because remember Vorpal weapons are 20% damage bonus, they're not 10. Primary's a little bit different. Vorpal's fantastic on primary, so maybe use a Vorpal one if you haven't got adaptive. That'll still melt the shield pretty fast. Sometimes now and again though, the boss will come into middle. If that happens in this middle lane, then just de-aggro and wait. Let the boss loop, because what the boss is actually physically doing right now is he's on right side. He's at the right exit. But like right now, look. As soon as you see that, run away. And then you're going to have to let that barrier regen. It sometimes will happen. It won't happen too much. It's not as bad as it used to be. I remember it used to be an absolute nightmare when Glassway first came out and there's 4 barriers. And the boss would push at the worst time all the time. This time it's not too bad because you have the opportunity to sort of melt them. Even though we haven't got like Taipan on, which Taipan would help us out more here than what the sword is. The sword's doing nothing for us now. But the sword's done its job. It's done its job of making overloads consistent. And that's your worry. It isn't no barriers. Barriers requires just some good strafe movement, that's all. Overloads, different story if you haven't got things in check. We've missed our nade there, unfortunately. That's going to hurt us a little bit. Because I don't want the boss pushing when this barrier is a 3rd HP. We could go out there and use a Nova Warp as well and survive. Definitely tank the stuff. So if you want to do that, you could, but you need to have the barrier. I would break the barrier shield like half HP and then push, sort of thing. If you were going to do that, but I wouldn't recommend it anyway, really. You don't need to. You can use the Nova Warp for damage if you want on the boss. So there's 1 barrier left. When there's when there's only 1 barrier on their own, it will teleport and de-aggro a lot because it's that threat level. The barrier is threatened by you because there's only 1, whereas before, if you notice, there was 4. They were pushing like crazy. Now, not so much noise. So you need to really quickly melt the barrier before that boss comes back. using La Monarque. That's where the counter charge high energy fire comes in. That's what I was saying earlier. You could run Lucent Blade, yeah, but Lucent Blade ain't giving you a damage bonus for La Monarque, is it? So this is where the story of sometimes you pick a smaller buff to get a buff across all your weapons rather than one buff just for one of your weapons. And I've also shown that you don't need Lucent Blade. I did on the Hunter. If you notice on the Hunter when I ran Lucent Blade, the reason for that is the Quick Fang was a badly rolled sword. Well, it wasn't badly rolled, but it wasn't as good as what I would like. One for All is terrible on swords, but I don't even think it as well in Blade does Quick Fang. So I had to improvise with that. Whereas this one I don't have to. I can use high energy fire with the debuff and it allows me to melt the champs, no problem. So speed up the footage again. Like you can see, a pretty straightforward run. This will obviously net you D.F.A Adept if you're looking for rolls on that. Perpetual motion time payload probably. Something of that nature. Definitely with time payload in it if you want a PvE roll. PvP is different. That was the solo on Glassway. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.